Okay, shalom everybody, and Shavua Tov, and very soon Chodesh Tov. We are now going to be approaching the month of Shvat, which is pretty exciting because Reb Noson writes that Shvat is a month for subduing evil and having a type of a breakthrough, initiative. In Breslov history, many things started in the month of Shvat. Number one, priority, Reb Noson was born himself on Tu B'Shvat, the 15th of Shvat. Number two, the first gathering ever by Rebbe Nachman's grave after he passed away as a group was on Erev Rosh Chodesh Shvat. And they got together. There were over about 50 people. It was on a Friday, and Shabbat was Rosh Chodesh Shvat. And they said the Tikkun HaKlali for the first time together after his passing. And on that day, they initiated lighting an olive oil lamp by Rebbe Nachman's kever. He speaks about lighting an olive oil lamp to mitigate harsh judgments. Rebbe Nachman talks about that. It's something pretty big to light a lamp made of specifically olive oil. There's an Ner Neshama that you light for a yard site for somebody passed away. There's Shabbos candles, there's Hanukkah candles. Okay, ideally Shabbos and Hanukkah candles should also be olive oil, ideally. But here also just lighting a Ner Tamid, it's called, a constant candle. He said it's something is big for mitigating harsh judgments, especially by the graves of tzaddikim. So it was initiated on the year 1811, on Erev Rosh Chodesh Shvat. Plus, Reb Noson opened up his first printing press in his house in the month of Shvat. So many things start in the month of Shvat. And he explains, Reb Noson, that the month of Shvat is the 11th month. Adar being number 12, Nisan, when counting from the months, Nisan is the first month. So in that cheshbon, in that calculation, so Shvat is like the 11th month. The word Shvat is like a shevet. It's like a rod to hit, to smack. And the 11 is like Reb Noson explains, the 11 fragrances of the Ktoret, the incense. It had 11 fragrances. And the purpose of the Ktoret is also to subdue evil forces. So as much as Tevet might have been somewhat difficult, because we're reliving the bondage of Egypt and getting out of Egypt and everything, which is these parashiyot now, Shvat is already a month of revelation, of redemption, Bezat Hashem. It's now going out to breathe, to have fresh air, to being you, to working on developing yourself, Bezat Hashem. So this is something pretty big for the month of Shvat, God willing. So now, like we said in the last class, we are now jumping to Reb Noson's letters to the year, 1 year before he passed away, 1843, 1844, okay? And he passed away, Reb Noson, the year 1844, 1845. So the letter we're going into is letter 440, which is mamash, literally, the exact same period that Reb Noson began to write his beautiful discourse, one of the longest ones, called Birkat Hoda'ah, the laws of giving thanks to Hashem. And the timing was amazing because Reb Noson, this was a very special time, like we said, that he just printed Likutey Halachot, volume 1, his own work where he develops Rebbe Nachman's teachings. And Rebbe Nachman himself, like we said in the last class, he initiated Reb Noson to do this, to write insights on the code of Jewish law based on Rebbe Nachman's Likutey Moharan. So now, the printing took place outside of the Ukraine, outside of Russia, because it was forbidden to print it in Russia, because the secular Jews who were in the government and who were pushing for the secularization of the Jewish people, they were called the Maskilim, they were able to convince the government that printing Hasidic teachings, especially those of the Balatanya, of Chabad and Breslov, induce people to be depressed, which is the exact opposite. The exact opposite is true. Chassidut is there to uplift people, but they gave a reasoning, a psychological reasoning, that these books are dangerous. They bring people to lethargy and to be depressed and sad. So they won the upper hand, and the books were not printed in Russia. So Reb Noson had the books printed in Moldova, Yassi. So the first consignment of the books, it's a lot of books to print, maybe 1,000 copies. That's how they normally printed. So once the first consignment was ready, Rav Nachman Tulchiner was able to cross the border illegally with the books, with the first consignment. Baruch Hashem, they didn't check every detail of what he's bringing in, what merchandise he's bringing in. And Rav Noson was already able to go around the Ukraine. And again, Rav Noson is a year before he passes away, and he's sick with stomach disease. What's it called again? He had colitis. Rav Noson had colitis. So Rav Noson went around showing the Breslovers the beauty of the work and to get them to pay off their commitments and money they committed in order to also release the remaining books. He paid partial amount, and he needed more money to get the rest of the books to be paid for and in order to release them. So you're going to see this letter. Reb Noson is talking a lot about money issues related to the Likutey Halachot, but in between you're going to see amazing words that he's going to say about himself and about the greatness of Rebbe Nachman and the greatness and power of supporting Breslov things. This letter is different than the other ones. The other ones we saw were written mainly to Reb Noson's son, Reb Yitzchak. Reb Noson had a few major disciples who stuck with him through thick and thin, through all the difficulties and all the persecution and opposition that the Breslov Chasidim faced during the years of oppression. We went into that. That was from 1835, 36, 37, 38, 3-4 years. He had like a few students who held on with him. Despite all the difficulties of the opposition, they were steadfast with Reb Noson. One of them being Reb Noson's son, Rav Yitzchak, another one, Reb Nachman Tulchiner, and the one who was always by Reb Noson. You don't see letters to Rav Nachman Tulchiner because he was always with Rav Noson. Rav Noson didn't have to write him a letter because he was always with him. Like every week, every 2 weeks, even though he lived in nearby Tulchin, but he was always traveling to be by Reb Noson and to do whatever Reb Noson needed, to travel with Reb Noson. In this case, for example, Reb Noson sent Rav Nachman Tulchiner alone to print the books in Yassi, to have the books printed. So you don't see that many letters written to Rav Nachman Tulchiner, but he was always by Rav Noson. He was like the Shamish. He was like the one who was so close to Rav Noson. And after Reb Noson passed away, he was able to continue the fire of Rebbe Nachman's teachings. Breslov is unique. It's still unique. And that there's no Rebbe, no living Rebbe. It's crazy. How do you make a movement without a physical leader? And yet, it's over 250 years. 1810, Rebbe Nachman passed away. Okay? So he was alive 1800, 1790. He started his following 1795, and it really began when Reb Noson met Rebbe Nachman in 1803. You know, look at this movement, 1803, 1903, 2003, 2025 now. And the movement is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And there's no living Rebbe. You know, other Hasidic groups, you have someone, you have an image, you have somebody to get a bracha from, to speak to give classes. Breslov, what in the world? It shows you the power of Rebbe Nachman's teachings. His fire is in his books, mainly. The main place, Rebbe Nachman's fire, the main place where he connects to the world is the books, the Sfarim. Proof, look at the proof. How many people are brought back to life from these teachings, from these books? Unbelievable. A whole movement based on Sfarim. They made fun of the Breslovers, they called them in Yiddish, the Toite Chasidim, the dead Chasidim, because they have a living Rebbe, but they're not dead. They're alive. There's guidelines. Rebbe Nachman gave very strict guidelines, for example. He said, for example, you can twist my teachings any way you want. You don't budge from one single paragraph of the Code of Jewish Law, of Shulchan Aruch. That's amazing. That keeps them in place. Then you try to do what you want, fine, bravo. There are people in Breslov who do what they want, but they're not considered the real deal anymore. They've deviated. Authentic Breslov following is that you don't budge from halacha, period. Okay? There are opinions in halacha, okay. There's opinions in halacha. Not inventing new things. Yes, we can do this, we can do that. We can daven shachar at 2 in the afternoon, it's okay. There are people who do that and they justify it. You do that, we understand you're doing that, but don't justify it. Don't now try to say, I'm okay, I'm all right. Know that you're wrong, admit that you're wrong, You're doing what you're doing, and you say, well, what can I do? I'm a misken, I'm broken, everything. But people try to justify, that's it, they deviate. And there's room for deviation in Breslov, but it falls off. The mainstream Breslov continues. It continues to continue. Baruch Hashem. There'll be deviations, people who try to alternate and everything, but there is still Baruch Hashem, the mainstream, and it continues. So that's what's giving the movement its momentum, its continuity. It's beautiful. Okay? Plus Rebbe Nachman's kever, which now Baruch Hashem in the past 30, 40 years has also picked up, and people are connecting, people are looking for a spiritual boost. People are searching. People who don't know who they are, and they need an opening. They go to Uman, and crazy things happen. Like they get zapped. You tell someone who really needs help in life, the first thing we tell you, go to Uman. Until you go to Uman, there's nothing to talk about. First go to Uman, and then we'll talk. Okay, that's a suggestion. I did everything. I tried. Okay, you didn't go to Uman yet? Try Uman. Go to Rebbe Nachman's kever, get his promise, say the Tikkun HaKlali by his grave. Let him be in his pocket, so you have that insurance policy next to you. B'ezrat Hashem. Okay? So you have the kever, you have the books, and you have the Chasidim. The Chasidim all over who have a special way of Avodat Hashem which is unique. And the davening is unique. The davening is special. Okay? The way the Breslovers conduct with the level of your Shemayim that they have, guarding their eyes, guarding their speech, always being involved in Torah and prayer, not looking at this world too much, more involved in the Tachlit. Okay, that's like a special trademark to the Breslover Chasidim. So it's alive. It's amazing. So Reb Noson had a few disciples. Going back to Reb Noson, one was Rav Yitzchak, Rav Nachman Tulchiner, like we say, where we left off. Is that he was able to continue the momentum that Reb Noson started of the Breslov Chassidut without a living Rebbe. He didn't become the Rebbe of the Chasidim. Reb Noson wasn't the Rebbe; he was the student, and he saw himself as the student to be revealing and furthering the spreading of Rebbe Nachman's teaching, not himself. Reb Noson wasn't interested in being a Rebbe. Someone once bought Reb Noson a shtreimel, because in that time only the Rebbes wore shtreimels. Today everyone's a Rebbe. Today all the Chasidim they wear shtreimels, but back then only the Rebbes wore shtreimels. And somebody who had money insisted that Reb Noson wear a shtreimel. And he insisted so much that he forced Reb Noson, had no choice. He put on the shtreimel. He didn't want to. And once Reb Noson went to the washroom, and he left it on Shabbos, and he left his shtreimel outside, and somebody stole it. And he was so happy. He was relieved. He said, "Oh, whew, finally I have a good excuse not to wear it anymore." And after I did it with the shtreimel. That's why the other Hasidic groups, they hated so much of Noson, because he could be a Rebbe if he wanted to. He was capable. He was, like we spoke about this in the last class, he was so in the ball game. He knew things that nobody else knew. And his way of talking and his penetration was so powerful. If he wanted to any second, he could have steered it away and directed all the attention to himself and become the new Rebbe of Breslov and everything. He didn't. He maintained being, in Yiddish, what's called a shtika blote. Shtika blote means a sack of a piece of mud. In his eyes, he was like a big piece of mud. That's how he looked at himself. So I'm nothing compared to what Rebbe Nachman is shining into me. On myself, I'm nothing compared to what I'm receiving. The light Rebbe Nachman shining into me is far more greater than what I am on my own. Okay? So I'm just going off a little. This was what Rav Noson was able to give over to Rav Nachman Tulchiner, who continued the movement to maintain that the movement would continue in a way that that Rebbe Nachman continues to be the Rebbe. He's the Rebbe of Breslov, and everyone else were just students. He said himself, Rebbe Nachman, I want to start something that I'm going to have followers, and these followers are going to have followers, and these followers until Mashiach comes. So Breslov is made up of followers, no Rebbes. You may have individuals who are special and they know how to talk and this, but there's no Rebbe thing in Breslov. That's the beauty of it. All the attention is on Rebbe Nachman. I remember once I was by Rebbe Nachman's grave. I was after Rosh Hashanah. What year? Well, it could have been the year 2002, 2003. And I was standing next to Rav Moshe Burstein. Rav Moshe Burstein was one of the Breslov elders. He passed away at the age of 96, 97. Okay, he had a long life, Baruch Hashem. And once I was standing next to him watching this, that he was about to leave Rebbe Nachman's kever to go into the second room. There's a room there, and some guy came up to him, and he kissed his hand, and he said, "Give me a bracha, Rav." And he got so upset. He moved his hand first of all. He says, "Rebbe Nachman is here, Rabbeinu's here, and you're asking me for a bracha? Are you embarrassed?" I said, "Are you chutzpah? Like, what is this? You're here by Rebbe Nachman's kever, and you're asking me for a bracha? You have the kever right over here. Ask for what you're asking here. What are you coming to me for? What do you?" That was the Breslov attitude. What the fame, the attention is given on Rebbe Nachman, and that's it. Why? Read his books. You'll see that this person wasn't a normal human being, and his teachings continue to penetrate and shine, and people live by these teachings. Like, by the way, I learned also Rebbe Nachman. It's not like that. It's not by the way I learned Rebbe Nachman. I've given my life to Rebbe Nachman's teachings. He's changed my life. I am now fully dedicated to these teachings because they're filling me up. They're giving me life and energy and hope, and everything is coming from here. That's how the Breslov Chasidim view Rebbe Nachman's teachings, which is why there's no room for another Rebbe. They get together, they speak. People who are capable of speaking, speak, but they're not now a Rebbe. They don't become like a Rebbe. They're holy individuals, but always the attention is on Rebbe Nachman. So that's why Reb Nachman Tilchin was able to continue. Then we have, like we saw, Rav Noson's son, Rav Yitzchak. Rav Noson was a bit like a father. He was tough on his son. So in the letters you see that he's a lot rebuking his son. But in his name, Yitzchak, it shows that he's dinim. He had a difficult life. He was divorced, he remarried, and he had trials. He was tough. So Rav Noson had to talk to him in a tough way. This guy, Rabbi Ephraim ben Rav Naftali, this letter of 440, was written to another disciple of Rav Noson, who was the son of Rav Naftali. Rav Naftali and Rav Noson were best friends from childhood. They grew up together and they came close to Rebbe Nachman together, okay? And they had different opinions, different hashkafot in Breslov, okay? By the way, none of the opinions of the other Breslover Chasidim exist today, only Rav Noson. Rav Noson was the one to be able to maintain the continuity of Rebbe Nachman's teaching still today, but it went through him. So we don't have today any traditions or any conducts or any hashkafas in Breslov that come from the other disciples. And maybe tiny things, but nothing which makes a big deal. Rebbe Nachman had other disciples, big people, Rav Shmuel Isaac, Rav Yudel, Rav Aharon, the Rav of Breslov, Rav Likutey, the Magid of Torah. He was a Rebbe. He was Rebbe of 88 villages, and he became a follower of Rebbe Nachman. He was over the age of 80. Rebbe Nachman was 20-something years old, and he bent himself to a 20-year-old Rebbe. Crazy, okay? And then you had Rav Naftali and Rav Noson. Rav Noson was considered one of the youngest of the students of Rebbe Nachman, but he received the most. So Naftali had his followers, his group of students, but today nothing is left from anyone else except for what we have from Rav Noson. Rav Noson was able to make the momentum to continue the flow of Rebbe Nachman's fire. Like he said, my fire will burn until Mashiach comes. It's through Rav Noson. There are other disciples, but Rav Noson is the main one. So Rav Naftali is very unique. Even though Rav Naftali had his approach and how he followed Rebbe Nachman's teachings, he knew that Rav Noson was the one gifted to guide the future generation. So he sent his son, Rebbe Ephraim, to Rav Noson. He didn't okay, you're my son, so now I'm going to give over to you, like I received me personally from Rebbe Nachman, my approach. He knew that Rav Noson was the address for the younger generation. So Rav Naftali himself sent his son, Rebbe Ephraim. The family name was Weinberg, by the way. Rav Naftali Weinberg, so his son Rebbe Ephraim Weinberg. He sent him to learn Breslov Chassidut from Rav Noson. This Rebbe Ephraim was someone very special. He was both very learned. He was a big Talmid Chacham. He had a big brain, okay? Very sharp. And he was also a businessman. He was a jeweler. He sold jewelry. So he was a bit well off. And he was also a Talmid Chacham. And he was very modest about his Torah knowledge. He wanted so much to emulate Rav Noson. He wrote 2 books incognito. Without writing the name of the author, he printed 2 books that he wrote. One book, it's called Likutey Moharan, which is paralleling what Reb Noson did in his Likutey Halachot, he also tried to write insights on the code of Jewish law based on Rebbe Nachman's teachings. And they call it in Breslov Likutey Even, the collections of Even. Even is a stone. But Even is Aleph, Bet, Nun, Ephraim, Ben, Naphtali. Okay? That's one book he put out. The second book he put out was, he was so inspired by Reb Noson's first discourse, the book that came out now in this time period. So it wasn't written yet. Rav Ephraim Naphtali wrote a book on the first volume of the Likutey Halachot, which is just being printed now in this year that we're in, 1843. It wasn't yet spread. It was beginning to become spread. He printed obviously his book on it later on. What's the book? He took Rav Noson's first discourse in the Likutey Halachot, which talks about the laws of waking up in the morning. Rav Noson, in one of the most beautiful discourses, he shows how the concept of finding the good points in life, in you and others, is associated to all the devotions of waking up in the morning. When it says in the halacha, a person should wake up like a lion, only a person who's able to find his good points will wake up. People who are depressed don't want to get out of bed. They go back to sleep, they're tired, they don't want to go to davening and everything, because they're not happy. He shows Rebbe Noson in the most amazing way that the whole idea of getting up in the morning to serve Hashem, which is a Jewish value, it's the beginning of the code of Jewish law, the beginning of the Jewish day is to wake up and go daven. The day starts with davening. Obviously there's preparations for davening. There's the mikveh, there's if you get up earlier for midnight chatzot, there's if you do things before Alot HaShachar, to wake up before dawn, okay? All these things Rav Noson shows, they're associated with the concept of finding the good points. It goes, Rav Noson, so far, he shows that how every blessing of the morning blessings, Birkot HaShachar, relate to a different aspect of finding your good points. Pokeach Ivrim, blessed is you Hashem, that you make the blind to see. Because when a person is depressed, he can't see clearly. He needs to find the good points to see, oh, now I see. Zokef Kefufim, Mati Asurim, someone who's bent over is able to stand up. Blessed are you Hashem, that able to make those who were bent over to be able to stand erect. That's someone who's depressed and he's crouched down to be able to stand up. Mati Asurim, someone who feels bounded. Blessed is you Hashem, that you release those who are bounded. Someone who's depressed and doesn't find the good points, he feels bounded. So he shows Reb Noson all the blessings in the morning and how Shachari, the whole prayer, is the idea of finding the good points. An amazing way. It was such an inspiring discourse that this Rebbe Ephraim ben Naphtali decided to write prayers on this first discourse. So it's one book, it's called Tfilot HaBoker, and it's prayers based on Rav Noson's discourse. Unbelievable. Just like Rav Noson wrote prayers on Rebbe Nachman's Likutey Moharan, that's the Likutey Tfilot in English, the 50th gate. So this disciple paralleled him. He wanted to emulate him, but on his teachings. He was so turned on by how Reb Noson in such an amazing way opens up Rebbe Nachman's teachings, the opening of Likutey Halachot and finding the good points. Rebbe Nachman's fundamental teaching, Azamra, Likutey Moharan, lesson 282. So he decided to make prayers on it. It's a very powerful book. Anyone who's read it, it's amazing. Especially when you learn the discourse and you say the prayers on it, it's totally moving. So this is Rebbe Ephraim. This Rebbe Ephraim was genuine. He was real, and he was very dedicated and devoted to Reb Noson, which is why Reb Noson is not embarrassed to speak to him openly about money issues, because he knows he listens to him. He speaks to him in an open way because he knows that he'll just follow suit and do what Reb Noson's asking. He was so smart, like we said. Reb Noson once told Reb Ephraim Naphtali, you with your brain and your grasp of Rebbe Nachman's teachings, and yet Reb Nachman Tulshiner, who wasn't such a smart guy, is able to grasp even better with just his simple emunah. In other words, you're a smart guy, Rebbe Ephraim, but not does Reb Nachman Tulshiner, my other disciple, with his emunah, he's able to grasp as much and even more. Okay, the exact wording of the sikha, the conversation, I don't remember, but that was the basic idea. Once, he was in an exposition of jewelry in Kiev, and he had his booth prepared with his jewelry that he was selling, and in front of everybody there. There are Goyim and Jews who were at this big convention, this big expo of jewelry. The convention where they're selling jewelry from all over Russia. He started to cry. And there was another Breslov Chasidic who also was a jeweler, and he knew Rebbe Naftali personally. He sees he's crying. He said, "Why are you crying? Why are you crying in front of everybody?" So he said, "Was this what I was created for? This is the goal of my life, to sell jewelry in a booth, in a convention, a jewelry convention. This is what I was created for? This is my purpose in life? I'm going to waste my life on vanities of Olam Hazeh, on money and this is my tachlis?" So the Breslov said, "Okay, I understand, but find a private corner. Why here in front of everybody?" So he says, Rebbe Nachman taught us otherwise. Rebbe Nachman taught us that when you have an arousal to come back to Hashem, there and then open your heart. If you wait until you find the right place, you'll lose that arousal and you'll lose those words. So if Hashem gives you an opening of a heart, don't say it's inappropriate here in front of the people. There and then, take advantage, because you might lose that opportunity. If you wait till you find a more appropriate place, you'll lose it. You'll lose it. So that's why he did it in front of everybody. So this is just a few stories about this amazing guy. He was zocheh to move towards the end of his life to the Holy Land, and he was able to get away with traveling at his old age every year back to Uman for Rosh Hashanah. Can you believe it? He was in his 70s, maybe 80s. He moved to Eretz Yisrael with his wife. He had still some money from his business, his jewelry business. And he would go back every year to Uman Rosh Hashanah. People thought he was crazy. So how did he get away with it? He said, "I'm traveling for business." How would he convince his wife? "Oh, I have some jewelry to sell." That was his excuse. People to go to Rebbe Nachman for Uman. No. Oh, you're nuts. You're leaving Eretz Yisrael. It's so long back then, and they're talking about the late 1800s. It's dangerous. You're an old person. But for Parnasa, oh no, it's okay. Parnasa, yeah, you can go. For money, you can go. So he knew that excuse. So he would tell everyone, "I'm going for my business." So, "Oh, well, you should be matzliach." No one said, "No, don't go." They said, "Okay, be matzliach." And that's how he passed away. He passed away on Sukkot, Erev Sukkot. He made it to his last year. He was very weak. He made it to Uman Rosh Hashanah. Then he went to his hometown, Kremenchug. He lived in eastern Ukraine, east of Uman, in a village called Kremenchug. That's where he lived. And he passed away there on Erev Sukkot, in front of Avram Sternhartz. Avram Sternhartz was taking off his Rabbeinu Tam tefillin, and after he took off his tefillin, he passed away. Or while he was taking off his tefillin. So he's buried in Kremenchug, this river farm. So this is the person who Reb Noson is writing this amazing letter to. Now let's get into this letter. Let's see what in the world is waiting for us in this letter. So this is again letter 440, and the year again is 1843-44. Okay, so Baruch Hashem, Yom Hey, thank God, Thursday, Parshat Noach. Okay, Reb Noson began writing this discourse, Likutey Halachot, Birkat Hoda'ah, number 6, the laws of giving thanks, Birkat HaGomel, in this week. He doesn't talk about Noach in the discourse. He starts talking about Lech Lecha. He starts Avram Avinu. He starts talking about Avram Avinu in the next week's parsha and his discourse. He starts off Reb Noson talking about the original Korban Todah. The Korban Todah, the Thanksgiving offering, was something very special. It constituted 40 loaves of bread. 4 types of bread, 10 loaves of each. 30 of matzah and 10 of chametz. 10 like chametz bagels and 30 breads made of matzah format, but in different shapes, different formats. Fried, deep fry, boiled, okay, different types, but 40 in total. And Reb Noson in the discourse goes into the deeper meaning behind the 40 loaves, how they each reflect a different stage in being released by being met b'simcha. He shows it's one of the most amazing discourses. I remember in Toronto, when I started learning Breslov, so my Rav, Rabbi Levi, he would love doing this discourse. He invested a lot of time even going over it again with us, because it's so beautiful, the power of thanksgiving as the key for simcha, and how it's reflected in this Korban Todah, and how each part of it relates to the idea of being happy, and how being happy is the secret for being released from danger in life. And how the 4 types of people who have to give thanks are reflecting 4 types of scenarios of depressed people in the world. Someone who's in jail, someone who's sick, someone who's going through a desert, and someone who's going by sea. How each one corresponds to different challenges of life that evoke sadness and depression. Someone who feels like he's in jail, he feels like he can't do what he wants to do in life. He knows what to do, and he's just like other people are preventing him from doing it, and he gets down and depressed. A person who's sick, he also knows what to do, but the body doesn't let him to do so. So there's a depression because of that. Someone who's walking in a desert, he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know where he's going. He's like walking in a desert. And a person who's by sea, where there's so much commotion and stress in life from the waves. That's the waves of life. So Reb Noson shows in an amazing way the moral dimension of the 4 types of people who have to give thanks. And he spent a lot of time when he started the discourse, the opening 10 paragraphs go into the Korban Todah, the details in the most amazing way. Okay. So he's writing this letter from Breslov. Shalom v'chaim v'chol tuv lididi havatik hamuflag v'chule. Look how he's talking to Reb Ephraim. Peace and life and only good, all good, to my friend, Vatik. He's like my older friend. We've been together for a long time, and it's true. He knew Reb Ephraim since he was born, so he's close to him from a small age. Hamuflag, who's very muflag is a term used for someone who's very wise in the Torah, etc. Morenu harav Ephraim Nero Yair, our teacher. He's calling his student Morenu harav Ephraim, our teacher, the Rav Ephraim, may his light shine. In kol bnei beito shechiu, with his whole family may they live. Reb Noson was very close not just to Rav Ephraim, but his whole household, because they were all supportive of Reb Noson. They were all on the same page. Baruch Hashem. Toda la'el avru yemei achag b'shalom. This is Parshat Noach, which is right after Simchat Torah, right after the high holidays, the whole month of Tishrei. Okay? It's already the month of Cheshvan, and he's saying, thank God, Toda lakel, thanks to the Lord, that we passed through the days of the festival peacefully, Baruch Hashem. Brich Rahmana Desayan Adkan. Blessed is the Lord who's helped us until now. Okay? Rebbe Noson saying this because, don't forget, he was facing a lot of opposition in life. And there was always difficulties popping up. So he's able to say now that Baruch Hashem, the Chag was okay. It wasn't difficult. Alright? Ata bati lahazkiro. So now that's right after the Chagim, and now there's time to do things now. So now I've come to remind him, you, Rebbe Ephraim, he's speaking in third person because that's a respectable way to talk to people. I've come to remind him, which is you, but he doesn't say him. He doesn't say you. He says him. Please see to it and try to collect the money that is owed to me for the books that I brought. The first consignment of the copies of the Likutey Halachot were brought to Kremenchug, and they weren't paid for. Okay? Bifrat etzel yedidi hanagid morenu harav Tzvi Hirsch ben Rabbi Yom Tov. I assume it's Yom Tov. He doesn't write it out. In particular, please collect the money owed to me for the books from my dear friend, the person who's well off, Hanagid, our teacher, Rav Tzvi Hirsch, the son of Rabbi Yutet, I assume it's Yom Tov, may his light shine, from Krakow. Krakow, not Krakow in Poland, but there was a village called Krakow next to Kremenchug in eastern Ukraine also, and there were Breslovers there and supporters of Rav Noson and Breslov who had some money. The wealthy Breslovers, they lived in the eastern Ukraine. It was easier for some reason for them to live there and comfortably, and also to do well financially. So he's saying, make sure you speak to him to collect the money. And he says, Ki haftachato hi etzli keman de munach bekuvsa. Because his word, his promise to keep his word, is for me like something which is already in my pocket. Keman de munach, it's like as if I have the money already. His word for me is as if I have the money already, so I'm not worried that he's going to pay. what he owes me for the books, or what he contributed towards the books. Ach lizruze yetera ka'amina. However, I've come just to push him further. Just everyone needs a little push. So I've come just a little to push him to be more on it. That have I come. You see from this, Reb Noson wasn't embarrassed when it came to Rebbe Nachman's stuff. When it came to Rebbe Nachman's things, he didn't have an embarrassment to ask people for support, because he knew that he was asking for something which stands at the pinnacle. This is the pinnacle. This is the greatest thing right now. Why should I be embarrassed? I'm giving you the biggest merit to spread Rebbe Nachman's teachings in the world. So he wasn't embarrassed. Normally people wouldn't talk directly like that, in a sense, but he did. Reb Noson was able immediately to start off the letter talking, I need the money that's owed, I need the money for this, because it wasn't for him personally. We're going to see in the letter. It was to spread Rebbe Nachman's light. And Reb Noson gave his whole entire being to spread Rebbe Nachman's teachings, so he has the right to lay it forth to other people. Hey, the money is needed, and this and that, and not being embarrassed and trying to be nice and everything. He was very open about it. And he says, Reb Noson, Ki ani mukhrach ata lemaot, because I need desperately right now money, funds. Ki ani ba'al chov gadol me'esek zeh, because I am tremendously in debt for this esek, for this whole story of printing the books, this whole dealing. Now this is something amazing, because Rebbe Nachman was very against people going into debt. He didn't he said people who borrow extensively for their businesses, it's considered a blemish in emunah. If Hashem send you the money, so go ahead, okay? To borrow little amounts here and there, fine, and you have the money coming up. But people who borrow $1 million and they start a new building and then they go bankrupt and everything, Rebbe Nachman wasn't supportive of those type of people who do that, who just jump in, okay? However, the Breslov Chasidim, when it came to building Breslov shuls or institutions or printing the books, they would borrow extensively. And they would ask them, how could you do that? Rebbe Nachman was against borrowing money that you don't have, big money, okay? So they said that Rebbe Nachman orally said, however, they quoted Avram Rebbe Nachman, the son of Rebbe Nachman Tulchina. He said that when it comes to a mitzvah, jump in. When it's a mitzvah, such as buying a house in Eretz Yisrael as a mitzvah. Do you know how? I don't know if you know in halacha, if now you have to on Shabbat sign a document to buy a house in Israel, okay? You're allowed to sign in a different language on Shabbat to purchase a house in Eretz Yisrael. It's a halacha in Shulchan Aruch. Crazy halacha. People don't know about this halacha, but on Shabbat, to purchase a house, you can sign what's called bishinui, not in Hebrew, but in another language. You can sign, and also with holding the pen in a different way, you can do that on Shabbat in order to purchase a house in Eretz Yisrael. The finalization is with the signing. The halacha says you can do that on Shabbat. Why? Because it's for this mitzvah of purchasing a house in Eretz Yisrael. Amazing, huh? So that's an example of a mitzvah. They would say, the Breslovers, when it comes to doing a mitzvah, borrow. Because it's a mitzvah, especially things associated with Rebbe Nachman's teachings, which is one of the biggest mitzvot. So they would go in. So Reb Noson, he wasn't embarrassed to borrow money against Rebbe Nachman's warning, don't borrow. He was against borrowing. You're borrowing for your own yacht and your mansion, don't do that. The Breslovers never borrowed extravagant. If they had the money, and they had the majority of the money, and they knew that money would be coming in easily, without a doubt, on normal circumstances, they would borrow then. It's like also a person buying a house and everything. And Eretz Yisrael, we said, is different, but the Breslovers would try not to buy a house in the diaspora. They would try to rent only and only buy in Eretz Yisrael. Remember, now, in the past 50, 60 years, there was a common agreement and understanding by Rabbi Rosenfeld and his disciples. We don't buy an apartment in New York. We buy in Eretz Yisrael. We rent only there. We rent in America. We rent in houses. No one bought. Okay? To buy, you buy in Eretz Yisrael. Of course, that's a mitzvah. Okay? But we don't buy a house and you don't fix yourself in Chutz La'aretz. I'm just saying that they would never borrow for businesses unless they had the majority of the money and they knew for sure, based on normal circumstances, the money's coming in. It's not a problem. What's needed just to make the store bigger and everything. So they borrow a little bit amounts that they know the money will come back in easily, and it did. So, but now going extravagant like many people do, and they end up being bankrupt for the rest of their life. Rebbe Nachman was very against that. He said, don't borrow like that. But for mitzvot, he would be okay, and Reb Noson did that. He said himself, I'm a Baal Chov. אני מוכרח עתה למעות, כי אני בעל חוב גדול מעסק זה. And it's for the books, the Likutey Moharan, Rebbe Nachman's teachings. Okay, I'm in debt majorly because of this whole situation, this whole thing of the books, this whole dealing. כאשר כבר סיפרתי לכם קצת, like I already told you guys a little bit about the situation that I'm in order to speed up, to help me to collect the funds and to pay back. וכעת עדיין אין לי שום ידיעה מעסקנו. At the moment, I have no idea what's happening with our dealings. In other words, in Moldova, what's happening with the rest of the books and the shipping of the next consignment of the books, I don't know exactly what's happening, where they're holding, and where is it standing? Did they send the books? Are they waiting for more money? ולא הגיע לנו שום דבר מחפצנו. And nothing came from us, to us, anything from our desired goal of getting the books. However, L'Hashem Yeshua v'Tikva, but I put my trust and belief in Hashem. For Hashem will be the salvation, and hope that very soon, akabel karau, I will receive the money as is proper and is fit, and we also will get the rest of the books. Fine. He's mainly talking about the rest of the books coming, and also the money to pay it off. And right now, because of this, the whole dealing of the books, my mind is not clear. I'm laughing because at the same time, Reb Noson is writing the most amazing discourses, and he's saying, right now my head is not clear. Your head is not clear, but you're able to write the most amazing teachings at the same time that you're saying this. Okay? I guess at his level, he's saying my head is not clear. Because he's saying something else really. My head is not clear because I don't know what to do exactly. I can't give myself the right advice in myself, how to conduct myself until we receive the actual shipment, consignment of more books. That you know. He's again very scared to mention in his letter about the books explicitly. He mentioned it once earlier, but afterwards he goes into another wording. Hachafatzim, the merchandise. Okay, he goes into different. He shifts to different wording because again, it was illegal to do this. So he has to be very, very careful in his wording. So he's saying now, I don't know what to do until we get more of the merchandise of the books. That you know about already. So he doesn't know, to send more money right now or to wait. They're waiting for he needs to hear from their side what's happening. And they didn't have email, they didn't have telephones back then. We have no one to rely upon, only our Father in heaven. So Reb Noson, again, he's showing us that he didn't just jump in to make hasty decisions, especially when it comes to money. This is something very big in Breslov. They never jumped in to make a monetary decision that they would regret afterwards. They would never go in. Come on, do this, do that. Okay. You have many people who are like that. Many people, they're like rush. And they see an opportunity, without thinking properly about it, they jump in. And then they regretted it, that they lost the money and this and that. In Breslov, they're very, very careful not to jump into anything without first doing hitbodedut. I think I mentioned the story here once of Rebbe Bender. Rebbe Bender, he was one of the elders in here in Yerushalayim, in Me'asharim, the Breslov Shul in Me'asharim. And there was a guy there who was also a money changer, and he presented to Rav Levi Yitzchak an opportunity that was win-win. He would not lose at all. All he needed to say was yes to the business offer, whatever he was offering the guy. And Rebbe Yitzchak Bender said, I have to think about it. And the guy was shocked. What do you think about it? It's a win-win situation. And he said, I want to think about it. I said, I'll get back to you tomorrow about it. So the next day, Rebbe Yitzchak goes to the money changer and says, okay, I'm in. So he said, why did you say that to me yesterday? It was so obvious that it's a win-win and it's only good for you. Why did you wait to tell me only today, a day later, I'm in. And it was so obvious to say yes, it's a win-win situation. He said, as much as it seems good and everything is right, I wanted to make the decision be through Hitbodedut. So I want to make sure I first had the time to talk to Hashem about it and not to be hasty. It's an amazing advice given by Rebbe Nachman is never jump into anything. Never jump in. For shidduchim, for buying something, always take your time to put it in your davening and let the davening have a part in the decision. As opposed to, okay, I'm in, I do things, people do things hastily, it's not good. Okay, you can regret it. Also, you didn't put it in davening. When you put it in davening, you have better chances for it to work out. Okay? So this is the big thing of putting things in through prayer. And if you don't know, don't jump in. Okay, so Reb Noson is saying, I don't know what to do. And my head is not clear because of it. That means he has to take time to daven about it. But now, sending the money, we don't have the money yet. What's happening with the consignment? They said, are they willing to release it? Did they release it? He had no idea what was happening at the time. So he said, I don't know what's happening on this point. But money still, he needs to have the money ready for when the consignment comes. And then he can release it and send the money ASAP. So he doesn't have to go through the extra burden of collecting the money. Rather, it should be ready in his hands, which we're going to see in the next paragraph. We'll stop here because this was a lot power-packed, just on the introduction of Ephraim and Naphtali and this letter. And Bezat Hashem, we're going to see, like I said, amazing things in how Reb Noson views supporting Breslov causes in tzedakah. And it comes out from this again, that a person needs a big zchut, a big merit, to direct his tzedakah to Rebbe Nachman causes. There's many charities in the world. There's many charities in the world at large. There's many charities in Judaism. There's many yeshivot and orphanages and people who need for Shabbos and people like this. And there's many causes and they're all justified. However, you need an extra zchut to give to Breslov. It's a zchut to give to Breslov. It's a merit. I like quoting Gedaliah Fenster on this. Gedaliah Fenster says people come collecting, and they nudge him. So he says, yeah, he just wants to get rid of them. So he gives them money. He says, but Breslov things, he runs after to give to them because he knows it's a zchut, an eternal merit to give to something which is associated with Rabbi Nachman. In the world at large, tzedakah to Breslov, it's like, by the way, let's give to the big foundations, the big organizations, the big kiruv, everything is big, 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 big. And people feel good about giving something which is very big and as big as meaningful. And people don't see the light emanating from Rebbe Nachman's teachings, which is still tiny compared to what else is out there. But it's powerful, it's potent, it's even more potent, but due to opposition till today, and people are skeptical and everything, people are doubtful to put their money in Breslov causes. You need a zchut to give towards printing Breslov teachings, supporting institutions and synagogues and Bati Midrash, and supporting the followers of the Breslov Chasidim. You need a zchut for that. It doesn't come by the way. And if a person feels uncomfortable sometimes because it's like schleppy, what is this? I can give to this I don't mention names, or these organizations, and I see clearly, wow, I'm impressed. By Breslov, it's growing, but I don't feel it that much. Only person who's zapped by Rebbe Nachman's light, he appreciates the beauty of giving his tzedakah. So this letter is a lot about giving tzedakah to the printing of the books. Also, again, he collected money for people who purchased books. It was more also to sponsoring for the expenses on that. And the Rebbe Noson had to jump in. So we're going to see a lot about the greatness of giving tzedakah to Breslov teachings. All right, thank you. And to be continued, Bezat Hashem. Thank you for joining, everybody.